EUIC has just passed, and we're going to be looking at the best decks from the event. Hey, Nick from 9Card TCG, and today we're going to be talking about the top 8 decks from EUIC that just that just happened. EUIC was a major event. There was like 1,500 people, and it was taken down by Alex Szymanski. So huge congratulations to Alex for breaking seemingly the curse. If you're not super familiar, there was this running joke in the community that Alex Szymanski would always get second, and he played against Tord in the finals, someone who has won an international championship from every single region. So you look at it like, oh, it's not looking too great for Alex, but he managed to pull it out with a very interesting deck that we will get to. But why don't we, before we get into the actual video, if you haven't already, do me a favor, like, subscribe, comment, I'll go to Stuff Tells YouTube, that's a good channel, people should watch it. Okay, now, we're going to head over to LimitlessTCG.com where we can take a look at these decks, and we'll talk about, you know, some of the interesting things about them, maybe why they were so successful, all that kind of stuff. So let's get right to it. The first thing I want to do is just show you the overall top 8 from EUIC. There were 1,525 players, and this is the first major event of the new Battle Styles, the Scarlet and Violet format. And you can see top 8, there's all the individuals. I'm not going to run through all their names, but you know, big shout outs to Pablo Mesa, Tord Reklev, Alex Szymanski, incredible work. Everyone who finished, if you finished top 8 at any event, really, I think you did incredible. But wanted to give some special shout outs there. You can see the decks that they're playing, where they're from. One of the cool things about these internationals is just look at all these different countries. I absolutely love that. Here are their decks. Links in the video description if you want to go back. But you can always just pause the video and take a closer look at a deck. But let's get straight to it. So number 8 on the list, we have a Miraidon EX Regieleki Vmax deck. And what makes this, the first thing that pops out to me is there's not a ton of things going on in this deck. It's literally Regieleki, Miraidon, Radiant Greninja, Raikou. That is it. And one of the things that you notice is that it plays a pretty high switch count. You got 4 switching cards and an escape rope. You're like, why on earth do I want to play so many switch cards? And it's because Electric Generator only lets you attach energies to benched Pokemon. So if we got a Miraidon in the active and we're playing against a Lugia deck, well, we can go ahead, Electric Generator, look at the top 5 cards of our deck, put up to 2 electric energies on one of our benched Lightning Pokemon. I think it has to be Lightning Pokemon. And then, so like we can put it on the Raikou. Both those energies go on the Raikou, and then we have things like the Switch Card and the Escape Rope to attack immediately, and then we can still attach for turn onto a Miraidon, so now we're able to start getting that ready for the next turn, things like that. Something like the Regieleki V needs 3 energies, so it's on the bench. Electric Generator, get 2 energies onto it, attach for turn, switch car into the Regieleki, or we can even use Regieleki Vmax, which has free retreat, to then start attacking with Regieleki V. Now, I know what you're thinking, something like Raikou doesn't hit very hard, but it does hit Lugia for weakness, it hits Palkia for weakness, not that we see a ton of that right now, but Miraidon does 220, that's enough to knock out most Pokemon V. Notably, it does not knock out Tyranitar V in one hit, and this list does not run Choice Belt, so you're not doing any extra damage, but, oh wait, you don't need the extra damage from Choice Belt because Regieleki Vmax does, it has an ability that increases your basic Lightning Pokemon's attacks by 30, so that 220 now comes up to 250. It can even go up to 280 if you have 2 Regieleki Vmaxes in play. So that 280 is now more than enough to knock out a Tyranitar, even if it has a V-Guard energy, which, by the way, V-Guard energy doesn't matter with Miraidon, but it might with Raikou or Regieleki or something like that. So a lot of things can happen, and that's why this deck is able to be so consistent. 4 Research, 2 Serena, 2 Boss. You got a lot of Gust and draw options. You got a lot of draw options with Radiant Greninja. You got 15 energies in the deck, so you're likely to see them off of the Electric Generator. And then some Forest Seal Stones. You slap them onto a Raikou or to a Regieleki. And there you go. Now you can find that missing piece. We even have mobility in the form of Beach Court. Both the Miraidon and the Raikou and the Greninja and I think every Pokemon in this deck has a retreat cost of 1 or less, and they're all basic Pokemon except for the Lugia Vmax, which is a evolution Pokemon. But I already said it has free retreat, so this deck is just hyper consistent. And then you have the Cramomatics just to discard an item card. You cannot discard Forest Seal Stone anymore, just something to keep in mind. Tools are different than items, but you got plenty of other items. You don't need that many Nest Balls because you just need to get one Miraidon in play to use Tandem Unit. Search a deck for 2 basic Lightning Pokemon, put them directly onto your bench. So if you have a Miraidon, you go ahead, get 2 Pokemon. One of them is going to be a Miraidon, the other's probably going to be a Regieleki, and then the other Miraidon can get you 2 more Pokemon. So you, for 1 Nest Ball, 1 Ultra Ball, you just got like 4 Pokemon. It's absolutely absurd. One of the real reasons why this deck can do so well. Number 7, the top 7, or the 7th place deck, was a Lugia deck. And even though we just talked about how something like Miraidon can set up really, really fast, it hits Lugia for weakness, and it can do a lot of damage, this version is kind of interesting. It runs a 2/2 Duraludon Vmax line, so it's not able to get hit by opposing Tyrannitars or Lugias or anything like that because they all rely on special energy. Now, most of the decks that we're going to talk about either can deal with it or don't even run special energies. And if you're playing a Lugia deck that has Duraludon in it, well, Duraludon shreds through other abilities. It doesn't get affected by effects or abilities on your opponent's Pokemon. So even if I hit into like a Miltank or like another Duraludon with special energies, I can just ignore the effects and the abilities, and I still do my damage. One of the things about this deck is you have a lot of attack options. You have the Duraludon, you have the Tyranitar, which Tyranitar is an incredible attacker. Something that when Battle Styles first released, Tyranitar was god awful. And now it's really, really good. The format has just made it so that Tyranitar can shine, and it's pretty cool. I did get into an unfortunate situation where Single Strike Crush forced me to mill 2 of my 3 Earner Vitalities, and I already used the 3rd one. So that wasn't fun, but it happens. Yveltal, Sojourner, they're just nice. Dark and fighting types are always really good. Having some single price options, never a bad thing. Radiant Serena is really important for the Lost Zone matchups. You have something like a Radiant Greninja, they're going to go ahead and put 90 damage onto 2 of your Archeops, leaving them with 60 HP left. And who does 60 damage to 2 Pokemon? Oh, Sableye. Let you put 12 damage counters on your opponent's Pokemon any way you want. So they just split 6 and 6 onto the 2 Archeops. It's a perfect KO. So the Radiant Serena messes up that math. You heal 20, which means they're able to heal 20 from each Pokemon. So now you can only KO 1 Archeops, and it kind of buys you a turn. Maybe it gets you that last prize. Maybe it doesn't make a difference, but still something that is not just theoretical. I did this at a league challenge just this weekend. It was just yesterday at the time of recording. That exact scenario happened, and I was very, very happy to have that Radiant Serena. It's Lugia. It does Lugia things. It's not nearly as consistent. Capturing Aroma sucks. I absolutely hate it. This is only running a 3-2 line of Lugia. Oh my god, I didn't even realize that until just now. They had to squeeze in all these energies. They got 14 energies. Not a ton. I run the same amount of energies. They don't run as many research, They don't run any Serenas, which is interesting. This is really similar to mine, except instead of having a 2-2 Duraludon line, I have a 2-2 Urshifu line, and I don't run those single prize attackers. So, something I need to play around with. But the 6th place list is another Lugia Duraludon list, and apparently Lugia Duraludon really, really good. This deck runs slightly different energy counts. They run fewer stadiums. They run the Pumpkaboo instead of having the extra stadiums. You can search the Pumpkaboo with something like Ultra Ball. So if Tempo Sinnoh's in play, Path of the Peak is in play, if you got an Ultra Ball, you go ahead and find that Pumpkaboo. We got Capturing Aroma, so if we flip tails, we can go ahead and get the Pumpkaboo. It's not nearly as good as what it was. Like I just said, it's just not as consistent. One of the things that every single Lugia deck is running now is the double Lumineon. It's just so important, and something that I probably should add to my own list. But the research, the judge, the boss's orders, the Professor Burnett. Professor Burnett is huge in this deck, and one of the reasons why it's so good is because of Capturing Aroma. So what happens is if you have a Lugia in the active or Lugia in play, you need to get Archeops in the discard. Well, let's say you're going second. It's your first turn, you're going second. You play the Capturing Aroma. If you get a heads, you can go ahead and get the Archeops and discard it with like Ultra Ball or Research or Serena, Read the Wind on Lugia, whatever. If you get a Tails, well then you just go get Lumineon, get a Professor Burnett, and then just discard the 2 Archeops with Professor Burnett. So either way you have an option, but it's really only good on that like very first turn or two, and after that Capturing Aroma it just feels so bad. But Lugia not going away anytime soon. Closing out the bottom half of this top 8, we have Lost Zone Goodra running the double Drapion, really respecting not only the Mew, but Drapion is a good attacker into something like Gardevoir. Why is it good in the Gardevoir? Well, because Gardevoir is weak to Dark, and the Drapion having a 4 colorless attack cost means we can go ahead, attach Mirage Gate, and then or double Mirage Gate, whatever. This particular list does not run Raihan, so we can't attach Raihan Mirage Gate. We have to double Mirage Gate onto that Drapion. But we run 3 of them. We run Culver's. We're probably going to find some stuff. We got the Radiant Greninja to draw. Goodra itself is pretty hard to KO, and so if we can really just kind of buy some time, they have to do a ton of damage. They have to get a lot of energies onto a Zacian in order to KO it. But it's really hard for us to KO the Zacian back unless they took damage from like Psychic Embrace. Zacian has 220 HP, Wrong Iron does 20. So we can go ahead and maybe find our one of choice spell, take the KO on a Zacian V. Really cool, really helpful. But we can also soften it up with something like Cramorant. We can finish it off with Radiant Greninja if it runs to the bench. Radiant Greninja is great into like Gardevoir decks, for example, because they have so many 90 HP Curlias. We just KO a bunch of them, or 2 of them, with something like Radiant Greninja. So really cool. I mean, it's Goodra. Some of these decks have been around for a long time. Just Goodra's really annoying to deal with. It can get really hard to KO sometimes, and that's why you're seeing these Lugia lists turn to something like Duraludon, because Goodra, when it attacks, it takes 80 less damage during your opponent's next turn. So that means that 270 just gets bumped up to 350, which is really annoying. But something like a Duraludon says it ignores effects and abilities, and the 80 less damage is an effect. So we just say, well, we don't really care. We just hit you for 220 anyway. So you don't worry about like damage reduction. We can still, it's a really good deck. I personally really like Hisuian Goodra. I'm not so sure it's gonna stay a top deck. These Zacian decks are ramping up real fast. Miraidon decks can ramp real quick. Lugia decks are running, if they're not running Duraludon, you're like me and you're running Single Strike Urshifu. That just one-hit KOs. Because it also ignores effects. But overall, I mean, Goodra can be really good into a lot of other Lost Zone decks. And Lost Zone decks in general are pretty popular at the moment, as we'll see in a second. So here's a really common Lost Zone deck that we're going to see. I'm pretty sure people refer to this as like Turbo Lost Zone. And one of the reasons that it's so good is because it just does so many things. You have something like this, the Cramorant to just go ahead and poke 110. You're knocking out basic EXs. You're knocking out basic Vs in 2 hits, that is. You're knocking out single prize Pokemon, like the Comfies, the Ralts, the Curlias, opposing Greninjas, Manaphies, all that kind of stuff you're taking one-shots on, which is really cool. You have the Drapion to deal with Mew and Gardevoir. Again, this particular list does not run Mirage Gates. There are no Mirage Gates in this, so you're not powering up the Drapion in 1 hit, but against Mew, you really don't need it. We got the Radiant Charizard to do 250, no Choice Belt, so we're not hitting for 280, so we're not one-shotting a V, but that's okay because any excess damage that we need to do can be done with something like Sableye. So we, hit 250 onto a Lugia V, They run to the bench. Okay, Sableye comes, puts 3 damage counters on it. You get 2 prizes. And you can put the other 9 damage counters on something else. So, kind of cool. Interestingly enough, we have Holucha with the Flying Entry. When we play this card from our hand to the bench, it puts 1 damage counter on 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon. Now that 3 damage counters goes down to 2, because we put 1 onto a Lugia. Now we only need to put 2 damage counters on it. By the way, now we can put 10 damage counters on something else. Maybe taking a KO with Sableye in that scenario we just crafted. It's really cool just to like pick off random things. I would love to see something like Medicham V make its way into a deck like this with like Yoga Loop, something like that. Be really cool. I do not know what this Mawile does. I gotta look that up. Mawile, Tempting Trap. During your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon can't retreat. During your next turn, the defending Pokemon takes 90 more damage from attacks. That is very interesting. That's so weird. So we use Mawile, Tempting Trap. They can't retreat, which means they have to play a switch card, which for some decks isn't a problem, but decks like Lugia often don't play a lot of switches, if any. So you hit into a Lugia V or a Tyranitar V, they take no damage right now, but they can't retreat. They KO the Mawile, okay, but then you run into something like your, I don't know, like your Miltank to do a bunch of damage, or your Cramorant. Now they're taking 200 damage. Now they're taking a lot of damage with the Radiant Charizard. They're taking 330 with, or 340 with the Radiant Charizard, something like that. So we can really rack up damage really quickly with that Mawile. Pretty cool. You are going to be giving up a prize, but giving up the Mawile might not be as big a deal as giving up, saying, like a Radiant Charizard or some other attacker that's going to do damage. So that's pretty cool. Also might be able to help you buy a turn, trap something in the active, maybe against something like a Miraidon deck. You bring, I mean, Miraidon runs a lot of switch outs, but I don't know, something like Lugia, I don't know, Gardevoir deck, I don't know. All these decks have answers to Mawile. Gardevoir can just ramp energies with the Psychic Embrace ability. Lugia can just accelerate energies with something like the Primal Turbo. Miraidon has a lot of outs. Sableye has a lot of switch outs, or Lost Zone decks tend to have a lot of switch outs. So you have to really choose your time to use it, but it is pretty cool. Miltank can't be hit by Vs. Just a random thing to throw in there and try to slow your opponent down a little bit. EXs can hit this thing, so keep that in mind. Pidgeot keeps us from decking out. And then the rest of the deck is things that are pretty common. Switch card, Escape Rope. We got some switching options. Nest Ball, Battle VIP Pass to find Pokemon. Roxanne is Disruptor. Clara to get some Pokemon back, or get some energies back. We don't really run a ton of energies. We got 6 of them, so we kind of need those energies, which is why we run a pretty high Clara count. Echoing Horn, bring back a Pokemon. Maybe we don't want to go through a big Regieleki Vmax or a big Mew Vmax. We want to go through a Mew V. Well, we can go ahead, Echo Horn, boss it up. We got 2 copies of Boss. We got a Raihan for when something gets knocked out. A lot of our Pokemon are pretty easy to knock out. So, you know, Raihan lets us get an energy into play from the discard and search our deck for any card we want. Really, really useful. Chorus is our main draw. Fog Crystal lets us search for a basic Pokemon or basic Psychic Energy. Very, very important. Gets our Comfeys. Sableye gets us Psychic Energy. Could even get the Mawile. Pokegear to help find all those supporters. Forest Hill Stone. Slap it on a Drapion, a Pidgeot, something like that. Search your deck for any cards you want. You can only use it once per game, but probably is enough to get that last missing combo piece. I love Lost Zone decks. I think they're very, very powerful. I don't know if this is the best Lost Zone deck there is. Yes, it had a very high placement at a really prestigious tournament, but one placement or one person taking a deck and doing really well with it doesn't mean it's the best. It just means they did really well that day. So something to keep in mind. If you like a different Lost Zone deck, it doesn't mean, oh my god, I have to switch and start playing this now. Try it, but you know, I think Radiant Charizard's underrated at the moment. I think everybody's all in on Greninja, but here we are, top 4. It's Mew. It's Mew. This is DTE Mew. I don't really know what you want me to say about it. It's DTE Mew. It's really good. It's consistent. This one plays 4 Path to the Peak, 3 Judges. Roxanne, really annoy your opponent. They play an Avery now to deal with Lost Zone decks a little bit easier, to deal with Lugia decks a little bit easier. You know, it's like, whatever, man. It's an extra draw card, which is really cool for if Path is in play, they can't use their own Genesect, okay? Well, I can still Roxanne, I can still Judge, I can still Avery, I can still see new cards. They got a couple copies of Forest Seal Stone. You can use Forest Seal Stone when Path to the Peak is in play, because Path to the Peak takes away abilities of Rule Box Pokemon, but technically, Forest Seal Stone is not a Pokemon, so it doesn't lose the ability. And something like a Genesect or a Mew, whatever, can still use the ability from the card that, from the Forest Seal Stone when it's attached to it, even though it itself doesn't have it. And that's why Path to the Peak doesn't take it away. So, Featherball is a new addition. It's like not a new addition, but it's a new addition. Gets you a Pokemon with free retreat. Both Mew V and Vmax have free retreat, so it's just a free out to one of those Pokemon. So something that you can play to thin the hand. Something like Nest Ball, you can't play. If you're wondering why does Mew only run 2 Nest Balls, it's because you can't run or play Nest Ball when your bench is full. So if you have 4 Nest Balls and your hand's now clogged, you have a full bench, you can't get rid of those Nest Balls. They're just stuck in the hand, so you have to discard them with Cram-O-Matic or Ultra Ball or something like that. And drawing into them or having them stuck in your hand with, like some supporters or an energy or a stadium, if Path is already in play, you can't put down another Path. So you kind of clog up your hand. So we only run the 2 Nest Ball and the 1 Feather Ball because we do have the Battle VIP Pass, the Crams, the Ultra Balls. Feather Ball you can play with the full bench, so it's easier to thin out of the hand than something like a Nest Ball. But yeah, Mew, still really good, even though Drapeon's a thing, even though people are playing, really Drapeon's the only real counter to it at the moment, but yeah, Mew. So now we're getting into the final decks of the video. This was played by Tord Reklev. Interestingly, 2 Zacian Vs. Roar the Sword lets you search a deck for a Psychic Energy and attach it to one of your Pokemon, but if you use that ability, your turn ends. Storm Slash on the Zacian V for 3 colorless energies. It does 60 damage plus 30 more for each Psychic Energy attached to it. Now, normally, this would be a terrible attack, but when we have something like this Gardevoir EX, and even the Chilling Rain Shining Arcana Gardevoir, getting Psychic Energies into play is really easy. Gardevoir EX has the Psychic Embrace ability. You may attach a Psychic Energy from your discard to one of your Psychic Pokemon as many times as you want during your turn. Now, it is worth noting that for every energy you attach to a Pokemon, it takes 20 damage. And you can't KO your own Pokemon with this ability. So you can't put on more than 220 damage worth of energies onto the Zacian. I don't know why you would want to, but just, something to keep in mind. You can't KO your own Pokemon with this ability. So now we get a bunch of Psychic Energies into the discard. You can see this deck runs 12 of them. And now all of a sudden that Storm Slash is doing a ton of damage. Brainwave on Gardevoir is the same exact attack on a single prize stage 2 Pokemon. You can do a ton of damage. So you can kind of use the Zacian V in the very beginning. You attach for turn, you Roar the Sword, end your turn. You got 2 energies in play. Maybe you go ahead, use some Battle VIP passes. You got the Radiant Greninja to draw. You got the Curlias to draw on your second turn because it lets you discard a card from your hand, draw 2. Oh wait, we can discard an energy with Curlia. We discarded an energy with Radiant Greninja. We're drawing cards, getting energies into the discard for Gardevoir EX. It's a really annoying combo. Of course, you have to have a mana fee so that you can protect your bench from things like Radiant Greninja, Rapid Strike Urshifu. Something to keep in mind. But your support account, you got a lot of one-of supporters in here, so you have to play them very, very carefully. We do have 4 research. We really want to be able to see cards and discard some things we don't want. Maybe our hand's filled with energies. Well, okay, fine, no problem. Normally, for a lot of decks, that'd be a problem. I play Lugia, I get a lot of energies in my deck, and it's like, oh man, this is terrible. But Gardevoir just says, okay, I'll just discard them all. I'll get them back later. Not a big deal. 1 copy of Judge and Roxanne for a little disruption. A copy of Worker. That's going to go ahead and get rid of things like Path to the Peak. This way we can continue to use Gardevoir's ability, we can use Radiant Greninja's ability, we can use Lumineon if we need to. If we play Worker, we're not going to get Lumineon, but whatever. Or we can use Lumineon, but whatever. We got one copy of Miriam. It's our only Pokemon recovery option for the deck. So, let you shuffle your deck, shuffle 5 Pokemon from your discard back into your deck, draw 3 cards. Boss's orders, Penny, pick up a basic Pokemon and put it into your hand. I think it has to have damage counters on it, but either way, you get to pick up a Pokemon. So, that Zacian V doesn't get knocked out, comes right back to the hand. Level Ball, Battle VIP Pass, Ultra Ball, Fog Crystal, they can all get basic Pokemon, well, they can all get different types of Pokemon. Fog Crystal also gets you Psychic Energies. We got a couple of stadiums, Temple of Sinnoh to deal with Lugia, Collapse Stadium to help with against Lugia, Lost Box, things like that. Sky Seal Stone with the Zacian with the ability to ramp up a ton of damage. Now you can take 3 prizes on something like a Lugia V-Star. If you get enough energies onto this thing, you can Sky Seal Stone, knock out a Duraludon Vmax. All of a sudden, now you're getting 4 prizes in just a single attack. And then when that Zacian goes down, okay, no problem. I just use Gardevoir EX to put all those energies back onto another Pokemon. An interesting play you can make is with the Cresselia with the Moon Glow Reverse. Moon Glow Reverse move 2 damage counters from each of your Pokemon to one of your opponent's Pokemon. So now, that's a really crazy attack. We can use Gardevoir, put 2 damage counters on all of our Pokemon. They each get an energy, so then we have free pivots for later. And we heal all that damage because we move the damage counters from all those Pokemon, all 12 damage counters total from our Pokemon onto one of our opponent's Pokemon. So now we can attack the bench if we want to, which is really nice. We hit into something with the Zacian V or Gardevoir EX or whatever. We don't get the KO. Okay, no problem. It runs to the bench. We just Moon Glow Reverse, put those damage counters, and heal our Pokemon in the process. Pretty cool. One really nice addition is the Mysterious Tail Mew because it lets you go ahead and get your rare candy. So you got enough Ralts into play, you got a couple of Curlias, we can go ahead and search for something like a Gardevoir EX or the Chilling Rain Gardevoir with Ultra Ball, and then we can use Mysterious Tail Mew to go ahead and find the rare candy and evolve straight from Ralts into Gardevoir, skipping the Curlia stage immediately. There are times where you really want to, and there are times where you don't want to, so you have to know when to do it. But overall, this deck is a lot of fun and pretty powerful. And the EUIC winning deck is Arceus Duraludon with a 1/1 Alolan Vulpix line, which is crazy to me. So, I mean, when you think about it, it makes perfect sense. Arceus, really solid at accelerating energy, setting up on the Pokemon. So Arceus also has an incredible V-Star Power Surge deck for any 2 cards you want. How do you go wrong with that? You use Arceus to power up something like a Duraludon. Now things like Lost Zone decks have a really tough time. Things like Lugia decks, if they're not running their own Urshifu or Duraludon, have it's like an auto win because they don't have a way to get rid of something like the Duraludon without Yveltal and Radiant, or even the Radiant Charizard without Yveltal. They can't get rid of that. So that's why you start to see other lists, like Lugia lists, play Duraludon and they play Single Strike Urshifu. But that's the only way they can deal with opposing Duraludon VMAXs. Drapion to deal with Mew, and honestly, even Gardevoir, you can go ahead and accelerate energies with Trinity Charge or Trinity Nova to a Drapion, because as we saw, Mew decks, they're playing Path of the Peak, which turns off Wild Style, so you can't attack for free when you're playing against Mew decks that much anymore, but we don't care because Arceus lets us accelerate 3 energies, and then we just have to attach 1 for turn, and then we're attacking anyway. So, really cool. But what is the Alolan Vulpix for? It's for the Gardevoir matchup, and it's one of those things that you don't really think about. Snow Mirage says that our Pokemon, we do, 160 damage, something like that, and then we can't, during our opponent's next turn, we can't be hit by a Pokemon with an ability. That turns off Cramorant, and pretty much every Pokemon in the Gardevoir. Let's just look back at this Gardevoir. Ability. Like, they have one option. They have 2 options. the Cresselia with the Moon Glow Reverse, whatever the attack is called, or this other hit for 110. You can hit for 120 with this one attack, so might as well do that. Or we got the Memory Skip Ralts. For 1 Psychic Energy, does 10 damage. And we choose one of our opponent's attacks, and during their next turn, they can't use that attack. So we go ahead and choose Snow Mirage on the Alolan Vulpix. They can't use Snow Mirage, and now, because they can't use Snow Mirage, next turn, they can get hit by a Pokemon with an ability. Now, we do play Escape Rope and Switch, so all we have to do is find one of those cards, and then we can switch into something with energy, manually retreat. Boom, there we go. We can go ahead and use Snow Mirage, knock out the 1 Memory Skip Ralts that they run, and if they've already used their Miriam, it's gone forever. Moon Glow Reverse is not enough to KO an Alolan Vulpix, even though it does have very low health. 240 on a V-Star is very low, 190 on a V, very, very low, but it's not enough to KO it, which means if we get into a scenario where they don't have their Memory Skip Ralts, and they don't have the Miriam, once they knock out that, the Cresselia, there's nothing they can do to deal with that Vulpix. So as long as you don't leave 6 prizes on board for them to boss other stuff up, and again, they only run 1 boss. Do they run a Power Pad? I think they run a Power Pad. So a couple of things you have to keep in mind. You have to keep in mind of the Ralts. You have to keep in mind of the Miriam, the Power Pad, the boss. But that's only 4 cards. Once you deal with those 4 cards or know where they are, you're pretty set. And we have the Radiant Gardevoir to take a little bit less damage from Pokemon V. The rest of it's just meant to be really consistent research, chorus, judge, boss. We really want to be able to pick and choose the cards we want, whether it's we want to draw as much as we want, or we want to choose one of our opponent's Pokemon. We have a Sharon's Care to recycle our Arceus. We go ahead, we use Arceus V-Star, we attack with it, we accelerate energies to our benched Arceus V. They hit into the V-Star, they don't KO. Sharon's Care, pick it up, promote the new Arceus V, evolve it, attach energy, start attacking, start setting up another, and we just kind of do that. We can't do it too many times, we can only do it once. This deck does not run Power Pad, but we have Lost City. And Lost City is really important because even if they do have Miriam or Power Pad in play or ready to use, if we lost City the Ralts, they can never get it back. We lost City the Cresselia, they're never getting it back, and it doesn't matter. So Lost City is really, really cool. Get rid of things like Radiant Charizard and Lost Zone decks. They can't collaborate it. Good. It's just a really cool way to get rid of some important Pokemon. And 4 Lost Cities means you're probably going to see it. We got an interesting energy count, 4 metal, 3 fighting, 2 water. We need the water for the Vulpix. This also means Lumineon is available as an attacker. We go ahead, Raihan water energy onto Lumineon, attach a DTE. We get it off the board, and it also puts it back into the deck so we can search it out and find a supporter later. And that's pretty much, I mean, Arceus decks are pretty simple. Arceus Duraludon's been around for a long time. The Drapions not a new inclusion. But now, we got some extra tools that we can use to deal with something like Gardevoir decks. Really cool, the 1/1 Vulpix. I'm glad it gets to see a little bit of play. I like when new things, or things that I haven't seen a lot of play, kind of start to get used. I think that's really cool. So that's all the top 8 decks from EUIC. So there you have it, EUIC decks done. I hope you enjoyed, found this informative. If you did, let me know in the comments below what deck you want to try. Is there one that surprised you or one that you really want to start playing? But that's going to do it for today. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time.